Hey guys, I'm Chris.
And I'm Mike.
Welcome back to this week's No Limits, the Scot Harvath Podcast. How you doing today, Mike?
Chris, I'm good. Just got a little bit of a confession to make to you, but it'll be an experiment.
All right.
I read the abridged version.
No, you didn't.
I did. We talked about recording this, yesterday morning or 2 days ago?
Did you finish it?
I got more than halfway. We're doing part 1 today, and I got a little more than halfway, so I have a few hot takes on the abridged version. I'm just going to put it that way.
So what's interesting, right, is we were like, yeah, we have a jam-packed January. We're trying to record every week, if not like multiple times a week.
Yep.
Had to get one in this week. Let's do Use of Force. I pull it up, 1.8 speed. It's only 6 hours.
Yeah, I think the full audiobook is only 11 hours.
Yeah.
11 and a half
So
hours. It's a shorter one.
And the audio, I saw you were listening to it on 3 times speed. How do you even listen to that?
So actually, here's what I did. I listened to the abridged version, the full first half of the book. And then to do a little bit of a comparison, I did go back and start the full version. Okay. But I didn't get fully through the first half. So I got like a third of the book in on the regular version. So that's why I was listening on triple speed to try to catch up on my second listen. But my second listen was actually my first listen of the full audiobook. A couple of results of this experiment. You're the scientist, so guide me through the scientific process here. But my observations were...
I guess we should say, we're talking Scot Harvath 16th, Use of Force. We're continuing on our path. We're almost done with the series. I think we have like 5 more books to go, and then we're just going to be hitting regular, this portion of the pod. We'll probably do a wrap-up pod, our rankings, that kind of stuff. But yeah, Use of Force, I freaking love it. But continue.
No, great book. And I guess while we're on programming notes, another thing is that once we finish these next 5 or so books, and we're all caught up to Shadow of Doubt, the most recent one, which we've already covered, we're going to continue our coverage of new books, the 2025 release and beyond, Edge of Honor, over on the Thriller Podcast. So if you have not yet subscribed to all 3 feeds of No Limits, be sure to go find the Thriller Podcast, our main active feed, and moving forward, the one where we're going to be posting all new Rapp books, all new Harvath books, and all the ones we're covering from Mark Rainey, Daniel Silva. We've done all the TJ Newmans and every other author that we keep doing over there. So be sure to subscribe to the Thriller Podcast. But if we're talking Scott, dude, I loved how the abridged version, it just hummed along. One thing flew right into the next. Combine that with a really good story, just really awesome story, great plot, a couple of really amazing set action pieces. And maybe the best part of all so far in Use of Force, it's advancing things. And if I didn't know what was coming, it'd be very exciting. There's some intel on Reed Carlton, some health challenges he's facing. Lydia Ryan is going to move to the Carlton group, and she's being watched. We know these shadow figures, this Page guy we're going to have to talk about. So there's a lot of nefarious things going on, a lot of changes happening in the universe. And we know that's a catalyst for something big, really 2 books out from now, one to 2 books out from now. So I love how the seeds are being planted, and knowing what's coming makes it amazing. Yeah. And if I didn't know what's coming, this is really planting the seeds. I think the first time I read the series, I didn't realize how many seeds were planted in this one.
Yeah, no, I that was one of the things I wanted to bring up was, obviously this is a reread for us. I think I've read every book except for Near Dark. For some reason, I skipped that year. So like when we get to that, that'll be my first time ever reading Near Dark. But yeah, so obviously you're talking about this culmination at Spymaster. We won't really get into too much spoiler warnings about that, but you appreciate that event more by rereading this and seeing what Brad is wanting to take the series. And I liked that we're seeing advancement. Like that's what you said. Like we're seeing a breadcrumbs to actual movement, which sometimes in these series we don't often get that year in, year out. You know, we get a story of the year, but I think that's what it makes this art of, I would say the next 4 or 5 books, like really special, is that it's gonna have this culminating event, and then we're gonna reap the consequences of that culminating event. And here we're kicking that all into motion.
Yep. Scott's personal life, Laura's mentioned a few times. We keep saying we want a little bit more of her. We want her present in his life. We know they're settling down. We know they're getting serious, but she seems to just be this mention in Scott's mind when he's out on the ops. And you're kind of getting the idea that maybe she's like a hindrance here, in that he's not really fully committing to showing Laura on page with Scott for a big percentage of the story. She's just kind of mentioned. But it's just going to make it harder because she's been in the background. It's like, I want them to have their moment. I want them to spend time together. Last book, he ran off from the river cruise.
I know, we got her
right?
like the first couple chapters. That was it.
Yeah, in that book, she wasn't very seen. And here, he's thinking about her, while he's off in Libya and doing all these things. I just want that moment of them to settle and be together, and him to, spend more time with the boy. And so it's tough to swallow.
Yeah, it's interesting,
Yeah. The abridged version.
All right, give it to me.
I think because I went back and read the full one, I really got the gist of it. All of the action scenes hit. It really moved at a nice pace. I do think you lose a few things. The key that you lose is Brad's elaborate detail on a setting or a character and their motivation. He can really flesh those out. One example is Tursunov. I think on the abridged version, I'm like, this guy's a mediocre villain. I guess he's pulling off these attacks, the Burning Man. Well, Burning Man, we got to talk about, but Compostela de Santiago, the Pilgrim's Church attack with the swinging chandelier. All these attacks are like setting him up to be a pretty good villain, and some of the richness, though, is missing. When I went back and listened to the full one, in Compostela de Santiago, the chandelier is swaying, and like that's part of the service, and like this massive chandelier is like a big centerpiece of this church. And Brad spends some time exploring that, and that's not mentioned in the abridged. There's another one when Scott's shaking down a dude. Oh, the guy at the cell phone store, the electronics store, when he does get to Libya, trying to trace the leads from the Burning Man explosion. And he's shaking the dude down. He offers him like $10,000 US, and the guy says no. And without even going back and forth, Scott just goes, $100,000, that's my final offer. And there was no like ramping up of the money and like, how is he convincing this guy to talk, and like a little bit of their exchange. So the gist of the scene I got, he's shaking down this dude. He really needs him to talk. If not, he's just going to take him, which he ends up doing, and actually drugs him and puts him in the ice cream freezer, which was dope. But like some of the richness of him like interacting with that guy, it's just like, oh, we go into the shop, give drugs to this dude, put him in a cooler, shoot out, get out of there. And you don't have like all the texture and the feels of being in Libya at this shop and having this shootout. So the Burning Man scene was full, though. Thankfully, in the abridged version, I think they gave nearly the whole thing.
Yeah, so
I
figure like with these things, they pick and choose what they want to extend and then cut, where they deem necessary. It's interesting because we do get a long backstory about Tursunov. Like was that chapter covered? Like really, because there was a bit of his backstory. So I feel like I got that, and the part about like Tajikistan, but then he was like never really there. So he's Tajik, but it doesn't really. He's never really set foot there. I think, right? Is that correct? So I think there's a little bit about his radicalization, but it's not completely the same as in the full version. Yeah,
that's why I'm like, he's not a great villain. But then I read the full text. I'm like, could be a pretty good villain depending on how this story shapes up.
At least through the first half, he's one of the more compelling villains we've had in a long time.
Yeah. Oh, another one on that, talking about fleshing him out. That whole couple of pages about 666, the devil's number, and he's talking about geography and history and all the times this number comes up and
when
why
he's in Paris,
when he's in Paris at the Tuileries. I think that's boiled down to just like, I picked it because it's a popular spot of Western society. A lot of French people are out in the garden, but there was so much more to why he picked those gardens or why he planned the attack how he did. And that didn't necessarily come through.
Yeah, and that gives him a lot more depthness and richness as this intellectual character this person who's been,
Yes.
because he's worked for both, been the Russians, been trained by the United States, has been a law enforcement, been in espionage, radicalized because he hates, to see what his country turned into. So his whole backstory is very interesting, and the fact that he's pulling off these, terror cell events, and this idea that he's aligned with ISIS, right, in charge of like European ISIS, but like loosely like also affiliated with the United States, I guess. And this idea that these terror cells, they want them to be singular with like having all these redundancies, so that way if one gets caught, it doesn't crumble the entire thing. So the way Brad sort of weaves this network out pretty quickly, because we haven't we've never seen this guy before. We're thrust right into the middle of the action with, well, first we have the whole boat scene, which is
the boat scene,
but then we jump
Sicily,
to Burning Man, right? And
Burning
Scott's
Man,
on the top, and he's like, oh,
right,
I'm just here to shake down someone I think may be planning an attack, but boom, the attack's happening right away, and he doesn't save the day. He saves the day partially.
They stop a few of them,
but one of them goes off.
But that ties into what you said about Tursunov, that he is that intellectual. He's modernizing the jihad. He's learning lessons from the past of why other Islamic extremist groups have failed or not gone as far as they wanted. And he's learning that, and he's strategizing, and he's building tactics, like you said, multiple cells that aren't communicating, so that there's this redundancy and the attack can go off even if some of them are caught. Well, we see what happens to the guys fighting the global war on terror who have to deal with a mastermind like that. Because Scott and his team thinks they're tracking the guy. They see him at Burning Man, but dressed the same way are at least 3 or 4 others who also have vests. Instead of just training one suicide bomber to go in, if he's caught, right, if that fails, it's over. The mission wasn't a success. Well, Tursunov knows to modernize. They got 3, 4 guys, make them look the same. They know how we're going to fight the war on terror, and they know how Scott and traditionally teams like that are going to go after them. And that throws a monkey wrench into it, and people die, and they fail at Burning Man. And that's, I think, to see the impact of that in the first action scene, then slowly learn there's a mastermind behind this who did that on purpose, does something new with this book. It's not the same old global war on terror that we've heard in these stories over and over. It's showing you how it's progressing, how it's modernizing, and that's all thanks to an evil genius like her.
Yeah, and then coupling that with the attack on the church, and saying that he wanted to attack America first because if he knew if he attacked Europe first, America would hunker down and would shut down. We might not be able to get that attack off. Versus, if you attack Europe, if you attack America, Europe doesn't really respond like that. So, he's a very intriguing villain. Really interested to see, where we go. I think where we're going to cut off is like right when he's in Paris. He's obviously scoped out this attack, but he needs a chemist, right? Because the chemist died in the first scene, right, of this smuggling from Libya to Italy, and the new chemist is going to be his friend's son, or his friend's. It turns out to be his friend's son, but it's also this compatriot's nephew. Yeah, did you get up to the scene where he's staking out but they might have another problem where he's being followed, and this guy's involved with drugs, and we get to see him a little bit in action. So I'm very intrigued to see what the ultimate end game is. Is it just this attack on Paris, or is it multiple attacks? Obviously, we've got to a point right where Scott went to Burning Man, shaking down. He has to go to Libya because of these cell phones. Through the Libyans, gets connected to the Italian mafia, where Tursunov. That's where the Tursunov
he's
collaborating with the Italian mob.
Yeah.
So we're seeing
Ragusa, I think.
We're seeing how, which I like, because sometimes when we cut through the first half, we don't always see where because it's always like this, the villain is going down one path, Scott's going down another. How are these things going to come together, if at all? And I see a clear roadmap for how this is going to be done, and I like it. I will say the other thing that I like, and you mentioned, we had talked about it briefly, and I was craving more of it, is this whole CIA, Carlton Group, espionage thing. Like, I was really digging that side story, and I'm hoping in the second half of the novel it plays a bigger part, because it was just cool. It's interesting. Like, oh, we're going to set the troll loose on the CIA, like have them take the job on you so that way we know we can control it. Like, that's super cool.
And we're seeing both sides of it. I think those scenes are fun, where this guy Page, who was rejected from the CIA after his op went wrong because he gave intel or an analysis that got them to take an imam, tortured the imam, gave him to Egypt, who tortured him. Turns out he was innocent. He wasn't involved with terrorism. That fueled the fire. He expected Carlton to back him up. Carlton said, no, you were sloppy, right? That this op was a mess. I'm not going to take any responsibility. So now he has this vendetta against Carlton, vendetta against the CIA. He has his own company, right, around it, Page Industries or something.
An intelligence agency that deals in stealing intelligence from the CIA, right?
Yeah. It's almost like the bad Carlton Group or the amateur Carlton Group. And he has this guy Jordan.
He's in the CIA.
Is the one who's in the CIA, but he's getting him intel. And I thought this was sketchy when he meets at Old Epic Grill with the woman, one of the best investigators of Page Industries. It's like, who do you need me to tell? Lydia Ryan. And she's like, did Bob McGee, the director, sign off on this? And the guy says, yeah. And she plays hardball. She's like, all right, well, get me a letter, triple my fee. You know, I'm the best. So he would pay it. Bob McGee would pay it and get me a signed letter. And we're kind of left wondering, is this Jordan dude working for Page? Are they going to go so far to lie? Probably lie, cheat, and steal to bring down Bob McGee and Lydia Ryan and expose the Carlton Group. And man, it was creepy when Jordan tosses him the flash drive and they're going through it and it's got the blue door.
Well, and then previously you had that guy snapping photos, like
taking photos of it.
That's something that
I've loved the blue door.
I feel like Brad doesn't do that quite often, where you have an entire scene and then at the very last second, or maybe he does, but like
a little cliffhanger. He
does cliffhangers like that, but who does that more? I feel like was way more of a Vince thing, to have like a shadow lurking in the corner that he would like draw your attention to at the very end of a chapter.
I think Vince did it more subtly though. And Brad just, like, his last sentence of a chapter is just very direct. You may not know what's going on, but he's like putting it front and center for a reason.
A Bradism is the
I think
Thorism.
Vince was subtle about it. I think Vince was a little more subtle. But yeah, the guy's snapping photos at the Lock House and talking about these seeds. They've been meeting at the Lock House for books now. Guy, Lydia Ryan, I mean, Laura's even been there. I've really enjoyed all the scenes at the Lock House, and to think now that's exposed. Uh-oh. And this Page guy is behind all of it, and he has a personal vendetta. You know, Vince wrote through Stan Hurley, never make it personal. It's getting personal, and I think we're headed to a bad place. I'll put it that way. So yeah, that's fun, but these guys are hacking into the network, and the troll wants clearance to go follow the hack. And one of them even says, let's let him in. And then Nicholas can trace him. So they're going to let the troll into the CIA's like most top secret, layer. We're headed for some crazy stuff to go down. And I don't know how much comes up in this book. I don't remember how a lot of that plays out, but we know it's going to have some fallout moving forward in a big way. So I really like seeing that all come together here. I think the B plot, if you want to call it that, with the CIA and with these people tracking the CIA and the Carlton Group, I think it's a great B plot. If Scott and what he's doing in Libya, due to the Burning Man attack and everything, is the A plot, this is a phenomenal B plot.
So I wanted to bring this up because one of the comments we had made based off of the last book, which was For an Agent, it's a book where you have to get a guy to get a guy to get a guy.
Yeah.
Now, we are kind of having a little of that here, but I feel like it's better. I think it's less guys.
I agree.
So we've only had to, we very immediately got the first guy, but then like we're mainly going to get the second guy, and then I don't know. It's a very similar trope, but I feel like it flows better. Like, am I wrong in saying that?
No, you're 100% right. I even wrote in my notes here, I love the pacing, and that could have been due to the abridged version. But even in the full version, I think I would say the same. It's not too many. It's not just on to the next, roll up this guy, interrogate him, get your answer, roll up the next guy. And I think a reason for that is we're seeing the in-betweens. I think what I like about the Libya sequence, well, the Burning Man sequence was just like, hit you with it, boom, right off the bat, cold open style. But then we went to Libya and we spent some time.
We were there a while.
Like, exactly. We went to the electronics store, which then took us to, was it Halim's house, this compound where they were holding the refugees? But it's tied together because he's running the migration ring, where basically, human trafficking ring, where he's extorting people and getting them this promise of a better life in Europe, and really he's putting them on boats to their death, as we saw in the opening scene. But he's profiting off this. Well, we're inside the compound. He's got his animals there. There's a trap door. Very Brad Thor, right? There's a tunnel. The tunnel comes up where the goats are. They start bleeding. So, yeah, we're seeing like these same flashes of Brad Thor, but he's doing it, I think, at just a cleaner, crisper pace. And like you said, this is a shorter book and the audiobook reads quicker. I think that's a good thing. I think it's crisper moving from the shopkeeper to Halim's compound. Then they have to skedaddle out of there. Then they're being tracked on the road.
That whole sequence
by the Libyans.
From amazing. Once they leave Halim's, I think like the
unreal
addressing the compound was interesting of itself. But then once we get Halim and we're on the run, like it's nonstop. Like
nonstop.
First
RPGs,
you have that whole scene where
grenade,
they're in that one village, right? And then Scott has to hop out at the graveyard and has to takes out two technicals. We get he's using this thermobaric grenade launcher.
It's insane.
And then, ultimately he uses an RPG on a technical and they get out of that, only to then, he keeps on bringing this up, or we lucked out of here one. Hopefully Murphy doesn't come back around. And then
a lot of Murphy
little
talk.
do you know, like they have 3 convoys converging on them. Then they have this like last stand at the Alamo type thing. Which was super sick.
He's on the roof with Haney. I think at one point he shoots the grenade launcher and then he runs, jumps off the back of the pickup truck onto the hood of the pickup truck, and then one hops it up over the parapet onto the roof to join up with Haney. That is just such a cinematic move. And then I think Haney's the one who eventually goes back down and ends up getting shot. So then they got to exfil him. And they split, right? The reason Stalin, Gage, and who's the other guy, Morrison, like they've actually decided to split up because the Libyan forces were kind of surrounding this village. And he even said they're learning. They wouldn't have, like, that's what I would have done if I had to come into this village. And it's like, they're doing that to us now. I think everything's evolving. And so Scott has to split his men, which I don't think we usually typically see.
And it's intense, right? Because there's 3 convoys. 2 of them link up. They come up and they kind of do a roll pass. And he's like, pew. But obviously you realize that they were just like, oh, we're going to go out ahead. The third people are
now you're trapped.
In the rear, you come and check out that place. They quickly dispatch that 5-team convoy. But obviously, and I'm imagining like very Mad Max-y style where he's taking out this 5-team technical, but then literally turns around and looks and sees this like cloud of dust with, the other horizon. Like, because there's someone called them, they saw they saw action and turned it around. And then they have to, in that convoy, they have 2 anti-aircraft technicals. So, and he sends his force out to kind of like, get out of there.
Slow them down.
They're going to be there to, take out the force.
And the drones. The whole time he's on comms with the aircraft carrier who's sending in drones. And it's like, there's a delay with them because one guy is like, anything that we do, or what was it? We're not going to fire on the Libyans unless it's approved by the so-and-so. And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
The whole sequence from when he gets McGee on the phone And to see like Brad like perfectly lays out like how this would probably actually happen, right?
60 seconds, the White House called so-and-so, and then the Pentagon called these people.
Well, first he asked the drone operator, like, he wants to have a senior. It's him. And he's like, we agreed that we wouldn't attack any Libyan forces. Well, that's stupid. All right, what about the Italian base? Well, the Italians agreed that we also wouldn't attack any Libyan forces. Okay. Yep. Is there anyone who can engage? And then he has this brilliant plan to like hand off the drone to an a Nimitz class destroyer in Selway because they don't have any of those handcuffs, right? And then the whole action scene is going on. You think like Scott's like about to die, right? Like they're taking barrage from, because one of the technicals he couldn't take out. There's still this 50 cal he can't take out. And then literally out of the skies, boom, they come to the rescue. It was a pretty cool culmination of that entire scene.
It felt kind of apostle-like.
Yes, a little bit.
It also felt a little bit like On Target, the fighting in Somalia.
Okay,
in that town. I feel like it was a mix of those two. On Target by Mark Rainey and The Apostle, an earlier Brad Thor book. It just had that feel. Like you said, the dust of the desert. You very clearly know where we are. The setting is amazing.
Yeah, I felt like I was there.
Yeah. There was the other one with the night vision. I think they called it sparkling.
Yeah.
When they would use like IRs and stuff and it would sparkle and everything would be in full color, even in the dark of night. But the other guys had that too. And Scott knew they had it from that base. So basically we trained some Libyans and opened up some like training camp, right? With the revolution, we were trying to support them. But then terrorists took over the camp, probably an inside job. And so they had all our devices. And Scott's like, I guarantee you, they got the night vision devices, with the sparkling to be able to track and see them from us.
And they're able to use that equipment, like, because the sparkling was coming from the drone, right? So
the drone was sparkling it. That's what it was. Yeah. Or maybe it wasn't nighttime then.
No, it was nighttime.
It was nighttime, and it was lighting them up. The drone was able to light them up. Yeah,
it was able to give them essentially like a path, like, oh, this is the path you go.
And didn't he mislead them?
And then he misled them forces, sparkle like in a different path. And that's when he's like, we're safe. Yeah. But then, all these villages they're going through, and he's describing them driving through, just, I imagine these small little towns have a couple buildings, but there's obviously a telephone game, right? Where someone's going to call someone there. Everyone's trying to make a buck. He even says like everyone is in everyone's pocket. So.
Yep. And the Glocks that they recovered, what was that at the cell phone?
Mm-hmm.
At the cell phone store?
The three guys he pops, those are also American Glocks.
They're American weapons. And he surmises, I bet these were also taken from our munition supply that we gave to the Libyan forces when we were training them. Turns out that's going to play a key role. So.
And some of the guys weren't using AK-47s, they were using M4s.
Yeah, not these standard old Russian hand-me-downs, Now they're getting the better equipment from us. We're funding this, So what'd you like more, Burning Man or Libya? They're two very different action scenes. One's really quick and snappy. One is a long, drawn-out sequence. Which of those is more your style? Because I think they both hit.
I like them both. Like I like having that, quick burst, like rush put right into the middle of the action, especially like in the beginning. I feel like we haven't quite had an extended action sequence like that where it lasted over the course of multiple chapters. We're cutting in and out. We're going back to Ryan. We're going back to Tursunov. Not only in one location, but we're in like three different locations that have three distinct action sequences, but it's all part of one plot. Maybe we've had that a couple of times, but it just seems different this time around.
You're entirely right. And the way you were saying it kind of just moved and flowed better. I think we're getting less of those abrupt, abrasive cut scenes when we want to see the fighting continue and the fallout of something that just happened. Like Scott misses his RPG shot, and then he owes Gage the $200, and they're joking about this. Like, I want to see the fall. What does he do next? Keep going. And then he jumps on the roof, and he's with Haney. Haney has to go back down. What's going to happen? There were less of these abrupt, all right, well, now let's cut to some random villain somewhere planning something, or cut to an inside job of the CIA. there were fewer of those jumps. And when those jumps happened, it was at a satisfying point, like a sequence kind of wound down. And I was okay with that. So I thought this was definitely Brad leveling up on pacing, being more crisp and concise, but also less confusing in the jump cuts and the jump scenes. Because we said that we picked out a few examples within the last couple of books we read where the jump scenes and the cuts didn't work, and it confused you. And as a reader, it ruined the moment. You had to kind of work too hard to stay in the game. This book, you're in the game. This thing sings.
Yeah, and I feel like, the time period right after, sort of like the come down, like or the calm after the storm, where we go to Malta, we get some debrief, the guys are resting up and sort of building up to the next segment. We would have more of those, like those chapters interspaced between these action sequences that, if you imagine it's like a run, it's like, no, I want to keep my heart rate up here, or if you're going to flip it down like a little bit, but don't bring me down. Like, don't have me have a cool down, like, and then ramp me back up. Like, it's not a HIIT workout. Like, I don't want to.
Yeah, it sounds like interval training when these guys are in the shit constantly. The adrenaline is, you're at 100 constantly. And sometimes these books are like the interval workouts. It's a good point. Well, yeah, like you said, we're going to Malta. Vela makes a little appearance. I think that's probably right about where we wrapped up, right? The first half. But the guys are resting, and I think I read ahead just a little. We got to turn to Palermo.
Like, I haven't gotten there yet.
So we're going to Palermo because we've heard about the 'Ndrangheta, which is the Calabrian mafia. They were involved earlier with Tursinov. He was talking to them and the boat people. And now the Cosa Nostra in Sicily were name dropped. So I think we're going to do some Italian mafia stuff next. And another little hint of what's coming. They're planning a nightclub op. I don't know what happens. I don't think this happens, but wouldn't it be a perfect opportunity to have some of the Athena ladies if they have to do a nightclub op in Italy?
Yeah, I can't remember. Like, this one isn't one of those books that just, escapes me. Like, now that I'm reading it, I remember it, but I still don't remember what the ending is. So,
yeah. All I know is we got this Ragusa. We have Tursinov linking to the Italian mob, getting weapons from them. Something about bringing in the chemist through these migrant boats that are being lost in Sicily. And I know we go to Palermo for an op. Don't know how it goes down. So I think there's a lot of opportunities. Chris, another thing we've done in the last few books is felt if there's one half that's really good, the other half doesn't live up to it.
I know.
Are you a little nervous?
A little bit.
Yeah.
But I like doing these pods where we don't quite know, because then we can actually praise what we can give praise where we think praise is due, instead of having to like sort of scrape it out because ultimately we were let down. But yeah, my excitement is super high. I feel like a plot, like you said, a lot of ways we can go. And then like I said earlier, I'm super intrigued by this political B plot with Ryan, with McGee, the troll. Love bringing in the troll. Somehow he's going to have to get into CIA, not being seen. Like, real interested to see how that happens.
It's going to be
this
awesome.
What was the name of that like source code he wants access to?
I forget.
It reminds me of like what Pegasus is, right? Like, so something very similar.
And I think it's Lydia Ryan's like, you're going to give that to Nicholas? And he's like very nervous about it. And Carlton's like, yeah, of course, he needs it. Or is it McGee who said
No, it's Carlton. Like, so Carlton is the one running this op to try to infiltrate the CIA on the current CIA deputy director who's actually coming to lead his organization. It's interesting. Are they going to bring McGee? He's like, I'll deal with McGee. So obviously McGee's going to get brought in the loop somehow. But
yeah, Lydia Ryan leading the Carlton group, though. That's why she's leaving. That's pretty sweet.
That was another like interesting thing, and I think Brad had Scott like sort of contemplate the magnitude of that, and obviously we get the announcement that the old man has Parkinson's, and they're having to meet early in the morning because that's when he's freshest, and needs to have this sort of plan of continuity, and he wants to have Scott become the leader of essentially what Lydia is at the CIA, right? So the number 2, charge of special ops. And I think Scott was kind of stung by that, in the beginning, because I think he had always envisioned, even though he says he doesn't want it, he's not ready for it. Thought like that he was being groomed to be the successor of the Carlton Group. But
I think what it really is that he just thinks he had thought Carlton would just be there forever. So he can always say, like, I know you want me to do this. I know you're grooming me for it. I know it's what your vision is for the company. But no, things are never going to change. You'll always be around. You'll always be in charge. And now he's being struck with the reality of that's not the case. He's not always going to be around. And if you're saying you're not ready, what does that mean? Because he's like, damn, I told Reed no. And I went on this last op from the last book. And Lydia's like, that's right, when he found out he had the Alzheimer's. And he's like, I didn't know. And Lydia's like, that's the point. You didn't need to know. You needed to operate. And like, don't feel bad about it. He doesn't want your sympathy. But changes are happening whether Scott likes it or not.
Yes.
And he's got to come to grips with that.
And I think it's going to influence his decision to, work part-time in Boston, his relationship with Laura. So a lot to come.
We know long-term Gary Lawler's back in the picture, but I still wonder these last few books, no Gary Lawler mentioned here.
Doesn't Gary become in charge of the Carlton Group?
Yeah.
So where's Lydia Ryan?
Well, so that's what I'm wondering. Lydia Ryan here is being tapped to lead the Carlton Group, and forget Spy Master Backlash. There's some transition. I forget where she plays or what she's involved in that transition. And then I forget exactly when and how Gary comes back. It's either Backlash or Near Dark. It's somewhere right in that time period. I know or Black Ice. I know Black Ice he's really involved in and back. But there is this like window, last 4 or 5 books where he's
not mentioned. Yeah.
Maybe not mentioned at all, or if he is mentioned, it's in passing.
Oh yeah,
so we know he's coming back. I just don't remember the timeline
in the last book, or was it the last book? Or
this one hasn't.
Where do we go to the bar in Germany? Was that
was the last
foreign
one.
Agent?
That was foreign agent.
He didn't even say Gary Lawler. He just said my former, had a whole explanatory paragraph explaining how he knew the bar owner, but never actually said that it was Gary Lawler. So,
yeah, I think because we're supposed to be focused on Reed Carlton.
Yeah,
I think now, that's the be all end all of it. Is full steam ahead. Once Reed was introduced, it was like this dramatic
shift.
Shift
for sure.
Yeah. Well, dude, I hope, like we said, these books have been a tale of two halves lately. The first half was baller, dude. We said this before. We're on track for a high 40s.
Yeah.
This potential for one of the best books in the series. Easily top 5, maybe top 3. But that's just a potential. We got to see what happens in the second half.
For sure.
And I think Brad always lands the plane.
He does. It's just how you get there.
Is it one of those landings where everyone applauds because it was just an awesome job well done to the pilot? Or is it one of those landings that was Rocky Road and everyone applauds because, oh my God, we're alive?
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Man, those bumpy landings.
Yeah, that's funny. All right, so next time when we come back, we'll cover the second half of the book. We'll give you a limerick. We'll give you our cover talk. We'll give you our scorecard. Yeah, hopefully, again, like Mike said, this book has potential to be top 3 for sure.
Potential
to be top 5, top 3. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, we need to thank our patrons, our Deputy Director, Sherry F., our Special Operator, Jason C., our Special Agents, Ben, Daryl, Kevin, George, Matt, Don, Peggy, Mark, and Chris. Please subscribe, rate, and review to all 3 seasons of No Limits. You can find us at thrillerpod.com or on Twitter and Instagram at Thriller Podcast. Mike's been pumping out some very cool videos on the Instagram. He's a way better Instagram person than I ever was. So,
well, I'm getting some help from the technologies, getting shorts out. We want to get more video content out to the people. And I want to do cross platform posting so everyone can see us, not just the Facebook group or the Twitter followers, but our Instagram and YouTube as well.
Oh, yeah. We should mention
Speaking
YouTube.
Of YouTube.
You put all of our episodes up on YouTube?
All audio episodes are up on YouTube, and all future audio episodes will be up on YouTube. And I'm going to be posting all of our shorts there. So more short video content. And who knows, one day, if we get our act together, maybe we'll have some full video content available to our patrons first, and then eventually, who knows, maybe on our YouTube.
Yeah, I saw there's 273 episodes. Not like Pod of us, there's some shorts on there too, so that's why it adds up to 273. But yeah, if you want to listen to us on YouTube, you can.
Yeah, that means sometime mid-year 2025 we'll hit episode 300. We'll have to do something big, like you were saying. Yeah, good stuff. All right, be sure to subscribe on YouTube then, since that's our newest account on socials that we made, and look for our content over there.
And as always, just let Scott be Scott.